Hello students, I am Dr. Ritvik J. Gandhe from Department of Social Work, and we were discussing about functions and key issues of human resource management. So basically introductory discussion was going on, and we are continuing with that. And today what we are going to discuss is that, if you remember, we have been discussing the growth and evolution of human resource management as a domain. So let me first explain the importance of Hawthorne experiments, which I was discussing, that this was the milestone. I mean, this was the path-breaking event, and you can say it was a kind of a path-breaking invention, which actually turned all the ball game of the management thinking. So the management thought pre and post Hawthorne experiments is very, very important. So we will discuss this first, and then I will also highlight how these HR functions are actually obtained. They are achieved through a proper functioning HR department. So after this discussion on how this growth of HR function has happened, and after highlighting the Hawthorne experiments, we will talk about a little bit of the functions of HR department in a contemporary setting. So that is also one of the key agenda of today's discussion. And then finally, I am going to briefly discuss about the factors that actually influence the HR function in an organization, to conclude this entire discussion. So let us begin with the Hawthorne experiments, also known as Hawthorne effect. Okay, so effect is a pretty scientific word. What do you mean by effect? Here the effect means any idea or any reaction of human being that actually traps, or that actually causes, or that actually explains the efficacy of the person, that actually is effect. So Hawthorne effect was basically named after the scientist Hawthorne. Why? Because for the first time during these experiments, it was established that human beings are critical. Human beings are very much important in terms of productivity of the organization. Prior to Hawthorne experiments, the management thinkers were only focusing on machine, material, money. So those three M's were really dominating the entire management thought. But as soon as the Hawthorne experiments were conducted, soon after that, scientific community started acknowledging the importance of manpower, or man, or the human being involved in the entire process of management. They were already aware of all these things. It was not that they were not aware of all these things, but it was basically for the first time that scientifically it was established through the way of Hawthorne experiments that yes, the motivation and morale of man is equally important. Equally important. It is in fact even more important than money and material. So what was those Hawthorne experiments? Simply to tell you, Hawthorne experiments was basically a series of experiments which were conducted between 1928 to 1936. Since this lecture is brief, so we will not go deeper into this Hawthorne stuff, but let me give you a basic idea. This was a series of experiments, out of which the most famous one was lighting experiment. Now you would ask, what was the lighting experiment? Very briefly, let me tell you. In Western Electricals in 1936, Professor Alton Mayo from Harvard University experimented with the workforce which was working in that plant. Half of the manpower was made to work in a low lighting condition, and half of them were provided the sufficient lighting conditions. And at the same time, half of them were aware that we are being observed, and half of them were not aware that we are being observed. It was later on scientifically concluded with the way of scientific experiments that the lot which was aware that they were being observed turned out to be more productive for the organization. Please note. Second thing, the lot which was given more lighting or the less lighting had no effect on their productivity. In some cases, more lighting conditions were facilitating the work productivity. In some other cases, even the less lighting conditions were also not affecting the production. So, and basically, it was established scientifically that basically the motivation and morale of human being, the very fact that they are being recognized, the very fact that somebody is observing them, The very fact that management is cognizant of what they are doing is a basic factor which actually pushes their work. So this was the first time when the scientific community scientifically acknowledged that human factor is very, very important. At the same time, it was a period of 1936, so post 1936, 1939 and 45, the World War II also happened. And you know that after the World War II, human factors become very much dominant everywhere. People started talking about human rights, this and that. So in every aspect of the human life, human angle became more and more dominant. So that was an era. So that's a very important milestone in the growth and development of HR as a function. Prior to Hawthorne experiments, management was only about machine, man and material. Machine, material and money. But post the Hawthorne experiments, the man factor became very much dominant. So that's a very important thing. Now, let us move on to the next point of discussion today, which is supplementary to what we were discussing in the last class, and that is the HR department. Whatever HR functions and objectives that we have discussed, they are achieved through a proper functioning HR department. So what is the function of HR department? HR is an idea. HR department is a functioning unit. So the idea of HR is actually gaining momentum and actually facilitating the HR idea through a proper department. So therefore, in each and every organization, you will find a proper functioning HR department. And if it is not there, it is almost impossible to achieve any of the HR objectives. So therefore, the first function of the HR department is to support the managers of HR responsibilities. Support the managers, those who are given the HR responsibilities. Second thing of the HR department is to help the organization to meet its objectives. And how it can be done? By designing HR programs. So again, designing the HR programs, depending upon the policies and objectives of organization, is another and most important function of HR department of any organization. Third and you can say the last very important core function of HR department. I am talking about HR department unit here. Managers and the HR department need to work together. So basically, developing a synchrony, developing a harmony, developing intermingling between the very function and the unit which has its function as a dominant function. So managers and HR department need to work together. So to develop a facilitation, to develop a kind of a harmony, to develop a kind of a balance between people is another core objective of the HR department. So once we are aware of the HR department, let me now briefly tell you the key functions of HR department. So you are now aware, it's nothing much to explain, but you can simply see that the employment is the core area of the HR department, then training and development. These are actually the same as the functions of HR. But to maintain the records pertaining to employment, training and development, payment, compensation, health and safety, and benefits, employee services, welfare services, productivity of the employee, their feedback, etc. Then the relationship of the employee within the organization and as a representative of the organization with another NGO or another industry is actually the core function of HR. So these are the typical things, typical records which are maintained by the HR department. Lastly, as I told you, to conclude this particular discussion finally, what are the factors that actually influence the HR of any organization? So here are the key factors which actually influence. First is size of the organization. The research suggests that size of the organization is a very important factor when we talk about the functions of HR, because when we talk about the functions of HR. So this is a crucial factor. If organization is small, then HR is very easy to operate. Then it is very easy for HR department to really operate. It has been found, and the research suggests like this. But the moment we start growing the size of the organization, that is the number of employees, it has been observed that HR processes become very complex and very dynamic. And the behavioral factors also starts working therein. So it becomes more and more complex and more difficult to really manage the HR system of the organization. So size of the organization is a very important factor. Second important factor which influences HR department is unionization of the workplace. Most of the times we have seen that this particular ideology, particular thought process promotes and provokes people to really agitate and do some protest and take that kind of a line, which is not basically subservient to the management, which is not basically to follow very easily, which does not allow them to really follow the management subserviently. So people make unions, employees come together, sometimes for good purpose also, for fighting their rights and all. But most of the times it ends up having a very illogical and very bad consequences as far as the productivity of the organization is concerned. So unionization of the workplace starts happening, and that unionization of workplace is a very negative, has a negative influence of the HR environment of the organization, but it definitely influences. Second thing, the third thing, ownership of the company. Ownership of the company is very crucial factor again from the point of view of HR, because if it's a private limited company, HR will function in a different way. If it's a government company, HR will function in a very different way. If it's a public limited company, again the policy will be the same, but the functions of HR will actually differ. So depending upon the ownership of the organization or ownership of the company, the practice of HR is determined. Policy may be the same, but practice will differ. And we are talking about the function, we are talking about the factors that influence the functioning. Functioning is essential part of practice, and so therefore ownership is another crucial function. The last and but not the least, the last and very important crucial aspect of that factor that actually influences the HR department is the philosophy of the organization. And these two factors work in unison. They are, you can say, two sides of the same coin. The management and the philosophy that management subscribes has a deep-rooted influence on the functioning of HR. Not only the functioning of HR of the organization, but also the overall productivity of the organization in terms of their mission and vision. I mean, the mission and vision is guided by the philosophy of the organization. And from the objective, for the very reason of their existence is actually the root cause of how the organization is going to function and behave. And since the philosophy determines how the organization is going to behave and function, it definitely has a potential to influence how the organization will be managed as far as managing human resources of the organization is concerned. So these are the core factors that influence HR. And with this, we really conclude and sum up our discussion, our introductory discussion rather, on human resources management. Thank you very much for watching.